Hey you guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny and I am That Props Girl. I am a props and set designer from Newcastle, Australia. And what we're going to be doing on this channel is we're going to have a little look behind the scenes of what I do, how I make my props, Pinterest trials and fails, decorating for events, room transformations, and a whole bunch of fun stuff. So if you're interested in arts and crafts or design for theatre, then stick around because you're going to love this. Be sure to give me a like and hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with all my future uploads. And with all that said and done, let's jump into the video. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is gather your supplies. Now you will need some styrofoam balls in both medium and small sizes, a bowl, acrylic paint, an acrylic gloss additive, clay tools, paint brushes, a Stanley knife, a cutting board, a nozzle for a piping bag, a Ziploc reusable bag, and wall filler. If you've got all that, then we're ready to go. The first thing that we have to do is that we actually have to take the styrofoam balls and flatten out the bottom of them so they sit flat in the bowl. You also have to do the same thing to the top. Now, I like to do this with a Stanley knife, but really any kind of thing like scissors is going to work for you. It just depends on what you've got. So there we go, we've got all three of the styrofoam balls. They have been chopped on the bottom and they have also been chopped on the top. Now the top one is a little more shallow than the bottom one. We still want it to be round because ice cream is round, but we don't want it to be too round that we're not going to be able to put the cream on top. So next what we've got to do is, see when I made these, I actually had to cut out on either side of the center one and then on one side of both the side ones in order for it to create a flat surface to glue it together. When you've done that, you're ready to put your filler on and start making that ice cream texture. Another thing to note though before you do start is if you have cut off a little bit too much on the sides, like I have with this one, it no longer looks very round. That is actually totally okay. The filler will actually allow you to make a bit more texture in there so it won't look as bad. Now what you want to go and get is your glue gun, and you just want to glue these flat sides together so you do get them sitting together like that. Don't worry too much if they're not gluing perfectly because again the filler will set that in place. When you are gluing, you want to just make sure that you do go in between and around the actual shape itself to make sure that you've really got quite an adhesive hold on it. Pressing them together does help as well, so it's an idea to do that. If you've got a gap in where you've cut it like I did, it's not a problem because you can just fill that up with glue, and when you cover it up with the filler, you're not going to know anyway. For this one, I went with more of an ice creamery style sort of texture, so it's a bit more layered, so it's not 100% perfect. I went with the Neapolitan style, which is what we're going to do again, but if you want to mix and match your flavors, go right ahead. Now when I'm using the filler, I like to put something over my cutting board just because I like to keep it in fairly good condition. Up to you whether you'd like to do that. I do suggest you use a cutting board because it's always a great thing to make sure you don't damage whatever surface you're working on. When you use your filler, you should look at using gloves if you're going to be touching it at all with your hands. I will be using a glove because I have to hold one side with my hands, but for the general application, I will be using the clay tools. Also as well, this stuff has got quite a poignant smell as well. It's almost like a vinegar or a really strong vinegar, so just be careful about that. Now it comes with this little plastic sheen over the top. Now you do want to put this back down again when you are done because it will dry out. So basically I just take my clay tools and then just basically brush it on there. I guess it's a similar thing as to if you were rendering a wall maybe, but that's the kind of texture that I'm going for, is that rendered wall sort of scoop look. You don't have to be too delicate with it, especially not with this sort of texture. I'm not super fussy about it. You don't want it to be too thin because you do want people to be able to tell that, look, there are layers in there. So once you've got your filler on there, you can then start to sculpt it. Now, I like to try and work in the opposite direction from the center one, just so it looks like, you know, you've got a nice defined circle there. So now you don't have to make like a huge line, but you do need to be able to see that there are 3 different scoops. Okay, that is looking pretty good. Now, when that's dry, you're ready to paint. I'm starting with the pink first for the strawberry flavor. Now, to make this color, I actually mixed a lilac color with a metallic pink and then a tiny dash of the red, because I thought the last time I did it that the pink was a little bit too pink, so I'm going for a bit of a lighter shade today. So we'll see how that goes. Actually moving on to the chocolatey brown color, and I am blending a burnt sienna with a burnt umber color, just a little bit of this one to go with this. I don't want it to be as dark as I made it on that one, so I'm just going to mix it in because the burnt umber goes a long way, so I'd rather it be a little bit lighter, and I can always add in a bit more. So that's looking just about right. I'm kind of going for like a milky sort of chocolate color. So now we're pretty much done with that, so we just got to let it to dry. I didn't actually paint the center one because it's already got that nice white color, but if you're going for a different sort of color scheme to me, then feel free to paint that. So we're about to go in with the chocolate on the top here. So I'm going to go in with this burnt umber again in the acrylic, but I'm also going to mix in this gel medium gloss to give it a bit of a shine, because chocolate tends to have a bit more of a shiny color when it's being melted down the side. And you might want to do what I do, and I sometimes use a separate brush to mix them and then use a different brush to paint it on. You're going to want to use a thinner brush when you paint it on. I'm going to start with this one, this nice thin one here, and we'll see how we go. I do like the fact that it does have a flatter edge, so I can actually layer it up on the top here, but then I can turn it on the side to do these sort of smaller strokes. So it's a really good brush for doing different things. I'm going to apply that back over where we were. Mix that in. Now I've made a whole lot of it, so we can actually be pretty generous with our application of it, because I mean, if you were ordering a sundae, you'd want them to be generous with the chocolate, or at least I would. So I like to think that this chocolate here has put a lot of effort into this. You don't have to be particularly delicate with it, as chocolate, when it's melted, is a liquid and it's just going to go where it pleases. So this one needs to be extended out a bit. I'll just have a look to see if there's any gaps, and you can always just do a little bit of a press in there, in the creases. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now we're basically ready to do the chocolate down the sides, so just lay your brush up a little bit more. Now you may want to get a bit of the excess off it. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to paint the cherries. Now all I've done to do that, because you want to be able to get around the cherry here, because it's a sphere, it can be really difficult to paint. So all I've done is I've got a piece of cork, and you can use a piece of sponge and pop some toothpicks in it, and then you just pop that in there, pop the little ball on top, and then you can paint away. Now I'm using a satin red with a dash of this brown in it, just because I want it to have a little bit of a darker cherry sort of colour. Now you might need to do a couple of coats on these, you might not, it depends on how full your colouring is, but these will actually dry pretty quickly because it's quite a small surface area. We need the filler again, because we're going to make the top of it here, they're going to make the cream in there. So to do this, you can either use a piping bag, or you can just use your tool again and just kind of shape it the way you want on top. I like to use a piping bag, but unfortunately they can be quite expensive to buy, so I cheat and I use a Ziploc bag and just a nozzle, because it's way easier to clean the nozzle, because unlike an actual baking product, this sticks to the inside of the bag and it's really hard to get out again. So what we're going to do is we're going to just chop a little corner off there, open up the bag, pop our nozzle in there. Now you don't want the hole to be too big, because you don't want the filler to be escaping down the side, so that's probably enough. And you want to open up your bag pretty wide as well, because it will get in the sides. And then just kind of like poke that around there, make sure some of it's in the nozzle and fill it up. And so now you've made your own disposable piping bag here, and that's ready to go. So you can literally just squeeze that out like you would a normal icing. And I like to just go around like that, around and around. There we go. Now we're going to go back through like I have over here, and we're going to fill it in the middle. Put a little dollop of cream in there. And there we go. We're basically done now. Just got to leave that to dry. So when our filler is dry, we're just going to take our glue gun again and put a little bit of glue on the top of each of the peaks. Take one of our little makeshift cherries and press that down in there. Now all we've got to do is glue it into the bottom of that, and then we are done. So there you are, we are done, and now you've got a dessert that's going to make audiences question whether they're eating real ice cream or not. It's so good you could eat it. If you have any suggestions of projects you want me to try, let me know, give me a comment down below. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.